I stood at attention outside Emperor Donut's war chamber, my ceremonial pulse rifle held precisely vertical against my right shoulder, scales polished to regulation shine. 5th generation Imperial Guard, House Vexrit, sworn to protect the throne with my life, as my ancestors had done for 12 centuries. The sounds of heated debate echoed through the ornate doors. Our war with the humans was not progressing as expected. My name is Guard Commander Sekther, and I was there when it all began to unravel. 3 standard cycles earlier, the Holgarthi Imperium's 14th Armada had crushed the human outpost on Skuletti. Our vastly superior weaponry had reduced their primitive defenses to slag in mere hours. Their troops, though surprisingly resilient, fell before our plasma barrage. The Second Fleet followed with successful strikes against 4 more human colonial worlds. Victory seemed assured. The Supreme War Council projected total human capitulation within 18 cycles. But that was before. The doors to the war chamber burst open. A tactical officer rushed past me, nearly colliding with my rigid form, his scales flushed pale with agitation. I maintained my position, eyes forward, as protocol demanded. "They're flanking the 7th Fleet at Gorv." His voice faded as he disappeared down the corridor. This had become increasingly common. The humans, despite their inferior technology, had adapted with unsettling speed. Their tactics shifted. They struck where we were weakest, vanished before we could respond. They salvaged our technology, repurposed it against us. But worst of all were the broadcasts. "Guard Commander," the Emperor's voice, Thex Nothar, stood in the doorway. "His Imperial radiance requires your presence." I suppressed my surprise. Imperial guards were rarely permitted inside the war chamber, and followed with precise, measured steps. Emperor Donut sat upon the obsidian throne, his scales gleaming with the royal iridescence. 15 generations of selective breeding evident in his perfect cranial ridge and elongated sensory spines. Around the massive holographic display of the battlefront stood the highest military commanders of the Imperium. "God Commanders, Sekther," the Emperor spoke, his voice carrying the harmonic resonance of the royal bloodline. "You have fought against the humans directly." It wasn't a question, but I responded with a respectful head dip. "Yes, Imperial Radiance, I led 3 ground assaults on their Proxima garrison." "And you have heard them speak?" "Yes, Imperial Radiance." The Emperor's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of distress I had never witnessed in our ruler. "Then perhaps you can explain this." He gestured to the central display. The tactical map vanished, replaced by intercepted human communication footage. It showed a group of human soldiers in their bulky combat armor, crouched behind debris that had once been a Holgarthi heavy tank. "Delta Squad to home base," one human said, weapon fire echoing in the background. "We've taken the defensive line, pushing forward to capture the supply depot." "Copy that, Delta. Any resistance remaining?" The human bared its teeth, a gesture I now knew was called a smile, though it originated as a threat display among their primate ancestors. "Nothing serious, just a few of Donut's sprinkles left." The humans around him made strange respiratory vocalizations. "Laugher," they called it. "Save me a bite of that donut, Bob." "Oh, I'll take a big bite out of that donut." Another soldier joined in. Donuts. Is it glazed or jelly-filled?" More of the disturbing laughter followed, even as they efficiently dispatched the remaining Holgarthi defenders. The Emperor gestured sharply and the footage paused. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his voice uncharacteristically strained. "My intelligence officers claim they are mocking me. My name is being used as some form of psychological warfare." The war chamber fell silent. The concept of mockery was foreign to Holgarthi culture. Disrespect to authority simply did not exist in our rigid social hierarchy. I cleared my throat. "Imperial Radiance, during my captivity—" "You were captured," General Verox interrupted, scales bristling. "For 7 rotations, before I escaped during a transport operation," I explained. I learned much about human communication patterns. It appears your illustrious name shares a phonetic pattern with a food item in their culture. I accessed my datapad and projected an image. This is a donut, a circular carbohydrate consumption unit often covered in sweet substances. The Emperor stared at the image, his sensory spines fully extended in shock. They compare me to this. They do not simply compare imperial radiance, I continued reluctantly. They use this similarity to create what humans call humor, a communication technique that creates social bonding through unexpected cognitive connection. Explain this humor, ordered war strategist Klen. I shifted uncomfortably. I cannot, war strategist. The concept has no Hogarthy equivalent. It appears to be a form of deliberate cognitive dissonance that produces pleasure responses in humans. How does this affect battlefield performance? General Verox demanded. Significantly, I admitted. During my captivity, I observed that these jokes raised morale. Troops who engaged in this behavior showed increased unit cohesion and combat effectiveness. They fear us less when they can laugh at us. The Emperor's scales darkened. A sign of deep distress or rage? Show me more of these transmissions. For the next hour, we watched in growing dismay as intercepted human communications revealed an empire-wide phenomenon. Human soldiers everywhere were making donut jokes as they fought our forces. Glaze the command posts. These sprinkled donut soldiers shatter if you hit them hard enough. I like my donuts with extra Hogarthy filling. Time to put this donut empire in the oven. After each crude reference, the strange respiratory laughter that seemed to energize them, even in the midst of bloody combat. Worse, their command structures were encouraging. We watched footage of human generals referring to strategic plans as Operation Donut Hole and Mission Jelly Filling. This is unprecedented, whispered Fleet Commander Eric's. They've weaponized our Emperor's name. The display shifted to a recent battle recording. A human ship, heavily damaged by our superior firepower, rammed itself directly into the command bridge of our dreadnought. The final transmission from the human captain, "Hey, Donut, time for breakfast." Both ships vaporized in a blinding explosion. They're becoming more reckless, General Verox noted. More willing to sacrifice themselves. Not reckless, I corrected, forgetting my place. Inspired. The humor creates a psychological separation that makes us seem less fearsome. It transforms their fear into determination. Instead of punishment for my outburst, the Emperor gestured for me to continue. In the prisoner camp, I observed humans creating crude drawings of circular food items destroying our ships. They called them memes. I projected several examples from my datapad's memory. These images spread rapidly through their communication networks, building morale across their forces. The Emperor rose abruptly from the obsidian throne, silencing all discussion. This psychological tactic must be countered, he declared. I will address our forces directly. Prepare a system-wide broadcast. 4 hours later, I stood guard as Emperor Donut delivered what he believed would be a morale-boosting message to our troops. His speech was magnificent. 15 minutes on the glorious history of the Hogarthy Imperium, the inevitable triumph of superior technology, and the genetic destiny of our species to rule the galaxy. He concluded with what our cultural advisors suggested would be a devastating counter to the human psychological operations. I am Emperor Donut, 14th of my name, conqueror of the 7 systems, destroyer of the Craxian Rebellion. My ancestors built this empire through blood and fire, and my descendants shall rule long after human bones are dust. Let them mock while they can, for soon they shall have no mouths with which to speak. The broadcast ended. The Emperor seemed pleased, believing he had neutralized the threat to our morale. 3 days later, human communications intercepted by our intelligence services showed their troops laughing harder than ever, now repeating the Emperor's speech with exaggerated intonations, focusing particularly on the phrase, "I am Emperor Donut." Something called remix videos appeared on their information networks, setting the emperor's dignified words to rhythmic sound patterns they called music. Their soldiers now charged into battle, shouting, "Soon you'll have no mouths with which to speak," followed by the unsettling laughter. The psychological effect on our troops was devastating. For the first time in Holgarthi history, we began seeing hesitation in battle, confusion in the command structure, even isolated incidents of insubordination, and the humans pressed their advantage. One by one, our forward bases fell. The 7th Fleet was ambushed and decimated at Gorv. 3 colonial worlds were lost in a single week. Our once inexorable advance had become a fighting retreat. The corridors of the Imperial Palace, once bustling with confident military officers, grew quieter. Tactical displays in the war chamber showed more red than blue. Today, as I stand guard outside the war chamber, I can hear the desperate discussions within. They are considering the unthinkable, a name change for our emperor. Cultural advisors argue that Emperor Vexrathol the Unyielding would command more human respect. Military strategists counter that any change would be seen as weakness, triggering more of the deadly humor. Through it all, I reflect on what I learned during my captivity. Humans are physically weaker than us. Their technology is less advanced. Their ships are slower, their weapons less powerful. But they have something we do not understand. This humor that transforms fear into strength, that bonds their fighters into cohesive units willing to die for each other, that allows them to stare into the face of superior force and see a breakfast pastry. As the debate rages on behind the ornate doors, my datapad quietly alerts me to new intelligence. Human troops have been recorded chanting a new phrase as they overrun our positions on Charmet. The donut has a hole in the middle, just like their strategy. I do not report this latest development. Some truths are too difficult for even an emperor to hear. If we survive this war, the first rule of our military doctrine will surely be, when facing humans, ensure your leaders don't have names that sound like their food. I am Guard Commander Sektar, 5th generation Imperial Guard, and I've begun to wonder if somewhere, deep in the ancient archives, there might be a Holgarthi word for laughter. I think we're going to need it. Many thanks to channel member Eddie Pieschek for making this video possible. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Video shares, memberships, and super thanks help the channel grow as well, so feel free to partner with this channel in that way as we grow. With that all said, thank you again for listening to the story, and thank you for your time. On the left side of your screen are some videos I think you might be interested in. I hope to see you in the next one.